Just turning up the volume here. Hi, boys and girls. It's Mrs. Green coming to talk with you today about some decisions that were made in the last couple of days in Mrs. Call's classroom. What I'd like to talk with you about is some of the decisions that people made in the classroom during the last couple of days when Mrs. Towner was in as a sub. And they were decisions to behave poorly while Mrs. Towner was there. And the problem with that is, well, you know what the problem is, but since we're talking about costs and benefits, let's talk about some of the benefits of behaving poorly when there's a sub in the classroom and some of the costs. And then let's figure out a way to fix it so it doesn't happen again. So let's talk first about benefits. Benefits of behaving poorly in the classroom when there's a sub. Can you think of anything good about that? Can anybody think of a good thing about behaving poorly when there's a sub in the room? When I was in third grade, I was a person who really valued following the rules, almost kind of in a funny way, and so I would have had a hard time coming up with a benefit for that, but I imagine that some kids thought this was a benefit. Many people might think that it's entertaining when people act funny, let's say in the classroom, or differently. So maybe some people felt like it was a benefit to act funny in the classroom and kind of act like the class clown and entertain people. Some kids thought that was a benefit. I can't think of another benefit to poor behavior when there's a sub, but maybe you can. However, I think there are a lot more costs to poor behavior in the classroom, whether there's a sub or not. But there's certainly enormous costs in the classroom when there's a substitute teacher in the classroom and people are behaving poorly. Let's come up with some of those costs now. Are you imagining in your mind what a cost might be to poor behavior when there's a sub in the classroom? I imagine somebody is thinking that this might be a cost. Whoops. I imagine some kids might have felt like kids who were trying to learn couldn't learn when other people were interrupting them, and that's an enormous cost of poor behavior in the classroom. What's another cost in a classroom, especially when there's a substitute teacher? Here's one. The substitute teacher might get her feelings hurt. I think a lot of you know that Mrs. Towner was a teacher at South Street School for a long time. She's a veteran teacher and she's a good teacher. And being disrespectful of her when she's trying to talk or trying to give directions, besides just being a poor decision, might even hurt her feelings. And that's kind of an enormous cost. So that was a problem. Can you think of other costs that happen when there's poor behavior, when there's a substitute in the classroom? And I'm thinking of a huge one for myself as a teacher, and it's this. If there's real poor behavior in the classroom when there's a teacher absent, then the things that the teacher hoped would get finished don't. And when the regular teacher comes back, things are kind of a mess because the sub wasn't able to get everything done because she spent so much time working on behavior. These are just three costs, but you can see that when there's poor behavior in the classroom, especially when there's a sub, there are a lot more costs than benefits, no matter how you cut it. So we really need to fix this. So I think the best thing we can do today to fix this is to come up with a way to tell Mrs. Towner that we are sorry. I think we need to make an apology to her, and I think we also need to make it more genuine than just I'm sorry. I think we need to give her some genuine, real ways that we could do things differently in the future. So let's do this. Let's open a new document. I'll choose one. And I will make it a little bit smaller so we can fit it in the window. There it is. And let's write a letter. And of course, what is the first thing you do when you're writing? This is what we would consider a friendly letter. What's the first thing you're going to put on it? I'm going to tab over and put today's date, which is March 11th, 2015. And then I'm going to put my greeting on. We need to open with some kind of an opening statement. How about something like this? Let's say this. How about that? Dear Mrs. Towner, unfortunately, when you were a guest in our classroom these past 2 days, many people were poorly behaved. Let's go on to say we'd like to prove that this isn't the best we can do. And then let's prove it. Let's give her some ways or show her some ways that we could have done better. Here are some ways that we could have done better with a colon. Now, here's your part. I've got index cards and pencils over on the computer table, and I'd like each of you to take an index card and put an idea on it of a way that you could have done better, something you could have done differently. If you were one of the people who was not poorly behaved and you were actually, in fact, embarrassed about the behavior these last couple of days, then just come up with a way that you think the class could have done a better job, something that the class could have done differently to have made it more successful for Mrs. Towner when she was here, and put that on your card. And then put your name on your card and drop it in the Easter basket that's there, because I'm then going to go through with Picky Pen, make sure that I've cleaned up the mistakes that are in there so that we don't have mistakes on our final copy. And tomorrow morning during bell ringer, I'll print a copy of our letter that we just wrote here, and I'll have you put your ideas on that letter so that we can send it to Mrs. Towner. What if we end with something like this? How about something like this? In the future, we hope that you will come back so that we can show you that we can do better. And then we'll put sincerely, and we can close with Mrs. Call's class. Okay, I think this will be a nice way to solve this problem, and I'm going to ask that you write your suggestions on cards today. Please make your best effort to sound spell if you're not sure about the spelling of a word, so that when I'm going to Picky Pen I can see what it is that you were writing. And hopefully we'll get a fresh start today and we'll have a better day. Okay, bye-bye.